an exciting time to be in the hemp industry, and today we're going to address the collision between regulations and the free market in the newly emerging hemp industry. And now we're joined by Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon. Thanks for joining us, Senator Wyden.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You first introduced hemp legislation in 2012 and led the effort to include hemp legalization in the 2018 Farm Bill. That historic legislation opened up a new and potentially lucrative market for American farmers and businesses. But the hemp market has begun to stumble due to COVID-19 and the failure of FDA to provide regulatory guidance since its enactment. Recently, you had announced that you'll be introducing comprehensive marijuana reform legislation along with Leader Schumer and Senator Booker. Do you have any plans to include any provisions in the marijuana reform bill that would address the regulatory challenges facing hemp?
Senator Schumer and Senator Booker and I have said we're sharing our draft with folks across the country. My sense is that they're probably separate issues, but let me give you a little bit of history and then talk about specifically what we're doing. I was very proud to have introduced the first bill to legalize hemp, and it stemmed from something that happened in Southeast Portland near my home when my wife was pregnant with our child. And we were walking through a Costco and we saw a big package of hemp hearts, and it said, really good for your blood pressure, really helps in terms of your cholesterol, great source of fiber. It just went on and on. Big bag of hemp hearts. And I looked at the bag and it was clear that you couldn't grow hemp in Oregon, even though it was being sold at a store close to me. And I said, hey, how about a rule for government? And that is, if you can sell a product in your Costco close to your house, then farmers ought to be able to grow it in Oregon and in the United States. And we shouldn't just give a windfall to Canadian farmers and farmers from China and everywhere else. And Mitch McConnell heard about that story and he started talking to his farmers. And so we put together a coalition led by Oregon and Kentucky to legalize it. And that was, as you noted, the Farm Bill in 2018. Ever since then, it has been a relentless battle to make sure that the Department of Agriculture and the FDA are introducing the law as Congress intended. And clearly the Trump people were not exactly tripping over themselves to be helpful. The Trump people left hemp farmers in what I call a regulatory gray zone. And so we were constantly battling to give farmers some sense of predictability and some sense of what was coming so they could take steps, for example, test their product. I've also been working with the Food and Drug Administration to establish flexibility in allowing CBD products to be sold at stores. So we've certainly achieved some success, but apropos of your question, there is a lot of heavy lifting to do, and I'm open to looking at various ways in the Senate to get it done. First, I want to make sure that the USDA and the FDA are the only federal agencies that regulate hemp and CBD. And the reason I feel so strongly about that is that's what the law intends. That's what we intended. Second, I'd like to see a clear pathway for hemp CBD to be sold across state lines and at stores across the country. This is important for producer certainty, but also for consumer health and safety. Now, there are a couple of legislative proposals over the last 2 years that seek to accomplish this. And so now the question is, for me, what is the best way to go about achieving this goal? I'm of the view that hemp farmers and producers are really on the precipice of an extraordinary economic boomlet. And if there are the right regulatory policies those opportunities can pay great dividends. So we saw in 2018, when you pass a law, you're not done. Then you just got to get to work, roll up your sleeves, and make sure that you're getting the implementation right. And as far as I'm concerned, all options are on the table for looking at ways in the Congress, working with the Biden administration to carry out the spirit of this law. And it all began with the first bill I introduced, which was, as I say, the opening opportunity for legalization. And it all started at that grocery store in Southeast Portland when my wife was pregnant. Thanks.
As you mentioned, the USDA is the primary agency regulating hemp. Last fall, the Drug Enforcement Administration issued an interim final rule purporting to bring their regulations in harmony with the 2018 Farm Bill provisions. However, many in the hemp industry felt that the proposed regulations went well beyond that, and that they were attempting to perhaps criminalize the processing steps if they temporarily increased THC levels above 0.3% THC limit. The DEA has also added some requirements to the USDA regulations, which have been onerous for farmers. I'm wondering if you think the DEA should be involved in that way, and if not, perhaps what can be done to ensure that USDA is the primary agency doing this.
What the Drug Enforcement Agency is doing here is wrong, wrong, wrong. And that is based on a clear understanding of what we were doing writing the law. The Farm Bill made it clear that the only two agencies with any regulatory authority over hemp would be the Department of Agriculture and the Food and Drug Administration. So it's my view that the Drug Enforcement Agency is misinterpreting the law, effectively criminalizing the steps it takes to process hemp into CBD. And as the author of the first bill to legalize hemp, I can tell you what my intent here has always been is to give the Food and Drug Administration, the Department of Agriculture, the authority to regulate hemp. And again, we will look at all potential vehicles, whether it's with the Biden administration acting of its own volition or legislation, to make sure that the spirit of what we sought to do is carried out.
So this has always been, about the farmers, the opportunity for farmers. And, in 2019, more than 10% of the hemp crops nationwide were ruled to be over the limit of THC, and there were thousands of acres of hemp that had to be destroyed. Most of these so-called hot crops were under 1% THC. I'm wondering if you feel that definition of hemp needs to be changed or adjusted so that, and whether that might be accomplished through legislation in the coming year.
I will tell you, I think it's time to end the failed cannabis prohibition. And again, that's for me a simple proposition. That would take care of a whole host of problems, both for the hemp industry and beyond. I would also like, as I said earlier, to use this as an opportunity to allow CBD to be sold interstate. The war on drugs in a number of particulars has been a war on our people. And it's time to turn the page, in American history. So, as I indicated, Senators Booker and the majority leader and I are working on a legislative proposal for comprehensive cannabis reform to ensure restorative justice, protect public health, and implement responsible taxes and regulations. And my colleagues, led by the majority leader, Senator Booker, and I, really want to invite comment and individuals who've been leaders in this field to weigh in. That's what we did last week when we announced that we'd be reaching out and working on ideas to share with people. So this is a good time for input.
Historically, hemp genetics from the era where hemp was grown back in the 30s and 40s, for example, those genetics weren't maintained by the USDA, and so they've been lost. And the U.S. has now fallen a bit behind other countries on breeding of new hemp genetics. I'm wondering if you have any plans to support any funding for genetics research or any of the other priorities, such as improving animal feed or encouraging more processing technology to get farmers a place to take their crop to the market.
The answer is yes, yes, and more yes. Hemp research and development, in my view, is critical to the future of the industry. Senator Merkley and I have been using the appropriations process to increase funding at USDA for hemp and hemp research. We've actually been able to increase funding by nearly $2 million for hemp research, and more can be done. And the two of us, Senator Merkley and I, are especially proud of the fact that our own Oregon State University is on the cutting edge of the research. They're currently doing research on using hemp biomass, for example, for animal feed, as well as doing a lot of research on which varieties of hemp grow best. So using Oregon State as an example, I want to clear that you've got 100% of Oregon's United States senators behind you, Senator Merkley and myself, on this funding for hemp research effort. And we'll just look forward to talking with you. I think with that, I've got a vote coming up. And also we're starting the impeachment process for today. In other words, we actually began yesterday. Why don't we just put this in the context of, I so have enjoyed the chance to work with advocates for hemp. It's such a great fit for my state. And I'm proud that that little story that I told you about visiting Costco with my wife really started it, caused the bill to be bipartisan. That's what Mitch McConnell will tell you. He's heard about that, heard from his farmers. And let's, if we could, after saying thanks to South by Southwest, let's put today's program in the to be continued department.
Thank you, Senator Wyden. And now we're going to continue the conversation with our guests, Adrian Zelski of High Grade Hemp Seed and Janelle Ralph of Rebotanicals. Welcome, Adrian, and welcome, Janelle.
And thanks, Eric. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's fantastic to be here. Thank you.
So the industry has really been taking off, and yet at the same time, we're facing some significant challenges. Where do you see the line between the regulatory need to have, protect consumers and that type of thing versus the free market, opportunity here for hemp? And what type of challenges are you facing in your business right now, Adrian?
From the CBD cannabinoid side, we're seeing a lot of excitement and a $2 billion industry without any guidance. So we're obviously seeing that it's extremely valuable and extremely desired by the people, that they want to be using cannabinoids, and CBD and CBG in particular are taking a big lead in that. Obviously the government's playing a little game of catch up, and that's creating a lot of disjointed market realities and a broken supply chain. So from High Grade Hemp Seed side and Center Pivot Group, which I've started to try to fix the farm side and help work with the whole supply chain to make sure that works beyond just the seed sales, it's really important that the government does help us and create the pathway to get to the consumers, because it's desired. And we're talking to major supply chain companies. I'm not going to name them yet, but they're mainstream products and they want to do it. But until the FDA gives guidance and until they understand how to get a consistent supply, they're not going to be able to get it. And my theory is this: there's 370 million Americans, there's 7 billion people in the world plus, and the endocannabinoid system's inside each one of them, and all the dogs and all the cats that want it as well. And so as soon as the government can really start to help give some guidance, I think it's going to be one of the most important parts of our new age of health and wellness and just living, in general.
Janelle, how about you from the retail side? What's your perspective on how what's happening with regulations, and how is that impacting?
Well, we're in a very challenging area right now. in the retail side of things. I mean, there is a lot of thousands of brands entering the space, all vying for some type of control of the market or some type of market share. You know, the top brands in the space are only controlling about 6 to 10% of the market space. And what's happening is, you know, we have a lot of supply entering the market, but the demand side of things, which should be there, is as was stated earlier, it has not caught up to the demand and the supply that's out there. I'm sorry. So what's happening is the FDA has not put a regulatory pathway in place for us to actually sell consumable products that the large large retailers such as Walmart and Target and other distribution channels are comfortable with carrying CBD products and putting them into their distribution channels. So we're seeing a real disconnect in the space. We're seeing a lot of supply entering the market from the farming and manufacturing side, and then we're seeing not a lot of demand on the consumer side because we don't have those particular large distribution channels to be able to put our products into. And the distribution channels that are available to us are, you know, very limited right now. Some of the areas where we would normally sell nutraceuticals and supplements and food products like CVS are only bringing in our topical lines, which is really, at the end of the day, extremely challenging considering our consumable products is really where the market is and where it needs to be in order for us to sustain as a viable business.
Interesting. Do you think that the consumers are being harmed by the FDA's sort of failure to regulate the market? What's the impact of that, sort of this vacuum that's out there, this gray area that's currently out there?
I think right now, you know, COVID has done us a little bit of disservice because it's been really challenging in our space right now in the supplement space where CBD has been up until a year and a half ago thriving and people were vying for it. Now that consumer base is looking for immune boost supplements. And I believe wholeheartedly that CBD is probably one of the biggest immune boosts, but we don't have the research behind it to be able to make those structure function claims. And so it's really, I think that unfortunately, we're a newborn industry still. We're moving into toddler stage. There's not been enough research and development done by the larger brands to be able for us to make real structure function claims, especially in the immune boost area. And if we were a little bit more of a mature industry and we could make those structure function claims, I think CBD would be booming and not some of the supplements that are right now. And we're seeing across categories, CBD is actually dropping across almost every retail category out there, the sales. And that's because the consumer is now not looking for CBD as much as they are for other types of supplements that can make those structure function claims.
Interesting. So, Adrian, what about the supply chain? Where are we at with the supply chain? Is it ready for the growth once the FDA steps in and clears some of this up, or once the regulations allow for it? Are we ready to go? What's your take on that?
You know, that's a great question. I think the eagerness is there and the desire for farmers to farm, and even the techniques are being figured out. The machinery, the harvesting equipment, the planting, the storage, that's coming, and it's right there. It's like the crack in the dam is leaking, you know, but once the FDA approval and the World Health Organization and the American Medical Association give, you know, the education that's needed, the farming will match it. But one thing that's going to be really tricky is from a genetic standpoint, we're going to have to really get a seed and a farm situation where we produce the same material across the board, because when you get to the Walmarts of the world, when you get to these massive companies like PepsiCo or Unilever, they're going to need the exact same, you know, profiles with the right amount of cannabinoids, the right amount of terpenes, and the right amount of mixture, because they can't have one, you know, tub of Ben & Jerry's ice cream taste one way and another taste another. It's going to have to be really consistent. So I'd say we've got about a 1 to 2 year learning curve while the FDA is figuring it out, and then being able to project outwards that we're going to have consistent supply is something that, you know, everyone in the agriculture business is attuned to. It's just been dammed up for 87 years. So once you can put the hemp industry into the place of big ag, they'll figure it out. I mean, and good farmers know what they're doing. Organic farmers, small farmers, they know what they're doing. It just, they need to have a pathway and guidance so that they can work towards standardization, making SOPs that big companies can trust, harvesting equipment that can do it in a way that's really good for the extractor. The extractor can, get the exact supply chain ready. It's one thing that follows the next in the supply chain that needs to get sophisticated, and all of that's happening. So what we're anticipating is, for the next 24 months, guidance comes, and we've built models that can do that. So that's what High Grade is really focused on, is those relationships, not so much the gold rush or green rush or whatever you want to call it from the Farm Bill in 2018, more about when this hits the mainstream, are we ready to do it and give the supply chain that these bigger companies are going to need?
Gotcha. So, Janelle, the USDA recently put out their final hemp regulations, and I'm curious what your take is on that. It seemed like those were, the USDA is trying more to work with the industry and really set up a structure that could work. What's your perspective on those regulations? Is that going to make it possible for you to be successful growing hemp?
Well, I think that they were much better than the first proposed regulations. I mean, I think it's almost next to impossible to say that we're going to take a sample and test in the field and then have that crop down in 15 days. I mean, that's completely unrealistic, especially if you're in the South, and absolutely unrealistic. Going to 30 days makes a lot more sense. I think that at this point in time, I think we can all agree that a 0.3% is a stringent number that we need to be able to give farmers more room to be able to grow. I mean, these are farmers. They're not intentionally trying to do something illegal, but just because of a 0.1, they could lose their whole crop and their livelihood. And people have to understand that this new crop is very expensive to grow, requires a lot of manpower, it requires a lot of time, effort, and energy. And to have something be, taken away and burned because you weren't intentionally trying to do something wrong. It was just a growing season. The environment changed from your previous grow season. I mean, there's got to be some credence there. And I mean, that's why I think I'm a huge proponent of 1%. I always have been. I think that we absolutely need to be making this argument and this distinction and make sure that those farmers have those protections in place. We all know that high CBD strains are not going to go over 1%. We know the psychotropic effect, it doesn't happen until then. Let's talk about science and let's get it right this time. Let's not just pick arbitrary numbers. And I think it's very important for the hemp community to gather behind that, especially on the farming side, especially as we start going into mainstream. When we talk about the Kellogg's and the Coca-Colas of the world, these farmers that are farming for them, I mean, this is a high risk. If it's 0.3%, if one of their farmers goes to 0.5 and they have to have their crop destroyed, then what happens to that supply chain for Kellogg's and Coke? We have to put protections in place for our farmers, and that's what that 1% does.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's something that Vote Hemp has been working on. We have actually a petition on our website, and I would encourage anyone who's interested in taking action and getting involved a little bit, that they could go to votehemp.com and sign the petition. We are trying to really urge Congress to make that change, and I think it's critical that we do protect farmers. No farmer should lose their crop or lose money because, like you said, that if they go slightly over the limit, it's not actually impacting anything that's happening in the supply chain. You're the CEO of a vertical hemp company with multiple brands. You're also a woman in the industry. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your background, how you got into this, and what your perspective is.
Yeah, so I got into this in 2014 because my youngest daughter was born with a rare genetic condition called lysencephaly, and modern medicine just was not able to treat her seizures. And by the time she was 4, we were looking at hospice for her, and that was early 2014. And basically the doctors had told us that there wasn't much more that they could do for her. And so I started doing research and looking for alternative treatments. And at the time, everything was leading me to a constituent at what was supposed to be in the marijuana plants. But after diving in and digging and doing a lot more research, I realized that component was actually the predominant compound in the hemp plant. It was not derived from the quote unquote definition of marijuana. And so I was kind of thrust into this industry due to the fact that out of need and necessity. And once I found out that that was what Harmony needed, I went and started looking for it. And it was really hard for me to find any type of reputable, safe, tested product. I created a group on Facebook called CBD for Children with Epilepsy. And I figured if I added enough people to it that wanted it, the demand would be there. Somebody would step up and supply us. Unfortunately, that was a huge mistake. We ended up getting a lot of charlatans and people that sold us bad product and stole money from us. I mean, it was really a trying time in the industry in late 2014. And I think what the straw that broke the camel's back is when we were sold THC, several parents, under the guise of CBD, and it was really a difficult process for a lot of us, considering it was a reputable company that sold us, or was supposed to be a reputable company. So flash forward, basically my husband and I talked, and we decided that if we were going to be able to create something safe, of quality, that was tested with our parameters that we would want to give our child, we were going to have to do it ourselves. So in early 2015, we created Palmetto Synergistic Research, and out of that came Palmetto Harmony, the brand. And then in 2019, we were the first vertically integrated CBD, organic certified CBD company in the space to get our grow, manufacturing, and our product line organically certified. We merged with Rebotanicals, which is the founder of Nativa, John Rulak. He created a CBD brand called Rebotanicals. He was the first organic certified CBD brand in the space. So it fit. We both believe in regenerative agricultural practices. So we only contract farmers in our own farm that use those type of practices. We believe that, carbon is going to be one of the major players moving forward in farming and in the farming space. I think it's super important that we understand how soil works with the farming industry and how important hemp plays into that role and what it's going to do to change the way that we look at things. And we got into this for Harmony, and we got into this because of the need in the space for people like her to have a safe, quality, tested product that they could rely on. And I think that we've been able to supply that to several people over the last 7 years. So, at the end of the day, we're just happy we can help as many people as we've been able to, and in turn help my daughter. And, she's still with us today, 7 years later, after the doctors said that she wouldn't be here after she was 4 years old. She's almost 12 now. And everything is due to CBD and the hemp plant and everything that we've done. We've been able to remove 90% of her pharmaceuticals. She's got a 95% reduction in seizures, and basically her quantitative EEGs that we've done pre-CBD to now have shown that it has actually repaired her brain. And her neurologist claims that he's never seen anything like it in all his practice. He's pretty impressed to say the least. And we are too. We're just glad that she's here with us every day. And we've been able to help so many people in our journey with hemp.
So Adrian, I know that high-grade hemp seeds and Center Pivot Group have been had a lot going on, and I understand you've got some interesting developments with the companies. And I'm also curious to hear a little bit more about your history. How did you get into the hemp industry, and maybe can you give us an update on what you've been up to and where you're headed?
Yeah, and my story is long, so I'll keep it a long story short. Cannabis was really an amazing awakening for me, and that was way before medicinal marijuana. It was right before California passed, but way before where it is today. And I kind of followed that path my entire life as far as a cannabis believer and a proponent for the plant. And I joined the International Hemp Exchange. I became vice president and chief business development officer. And we started, selling to people like Elixinol and Charlotte's Web and CBDRX at the time, which is now Functional Remedies. And just kind of got to know the Colorado hemp scene, which is really, an impressive group of people, and jumped in, head in, and just haven't turned back. And in 2018, sold about 4 million seeds, brokering for high-grade hemp seed, and got to know the founder, Bodie Urban, really well by selling some of his biomass, and his partner, Danny Billings, or Danny Fontaine. She goes by both of them. The group of people I was just around really, inspired me to go for it. And so I became chief business development officer for high-grade hemp seed. and became a principal too, also invested into it with some people. And in 2018, the Farm Bill passed, and then 2019, High Grade sold 76 million seeds. We were the inventors of cherry wine and berry blossom, which a lot of geneticists kind of took and did their own thing or claimed their own strains, but we had the original strains, and we held on to that and really developed good relationships with farmers all over the country, every region, every, type of farming, and High Grade became a juggernaut in the industry, and I was very fortunate to be a part of that. And then in 2020, with the industry really hitting a glut and hitting a overproduction, I was going back out to meet farmers, and they were all like, I'm still sitting on 1 million pounds of biomass. I still have lost money, essentially from farming. And so in that time, I formed a company, an adjunct company to High Grade, which is still monogamous to High Grade, but it's a farming company that basically goes and works with farmers to find a sale, to find a market for it, and to really work with sophisticated strategies like, Control Union is a company we're going to work with. It's going to do standard operating procedures. We're doing track and trace systems with a company called MTech Systems. We're putting together the whole supply chain in a way that bigger companies can start to look at it constructively. So now High Grade in that evolution became a part of Center Pivot Group's vision to have a sophisticated supply chain. And now we are being acquired by a company called Santa Fe Farms. Both entities are going under that umbrella, and we're going to evolve into a company that works on CBD and cannabinoids, but we're also going to work on industrial strains for fiber, for building products, for graphene, for everything that the hemp can do. So it's a great evolution to see how just jumping in and seeing where it goes, being a part of what's working today in the cannabinoid world, but also High Grade is looking towards the future, very much so. And we want to plant millions of acres of strains that you can replace paper and from being cut down on trees, and, graphene from being these hard plastics and metals that have to be created. So we're going to see where it all goes, but it's a really exciting time. Santa Fe Farms is our new entity that is now owner of High Grade Hemp Seed and Center Pivot Group. So we're going to see where that goes. It started by an amazing person named Stephen Gluckstern, who comes from a Wall Street background and a Warren Buffett kind of world. And so it's a really incredible time to think about where it's going to evolve to.
That's great. Really excellent story. And I'm really glad that you brought up the fiber and the grain. Obviously a lot of the energy around hemp farming right now and around the industry has been more with CBD. Most of the hemp being grown, I think over 90% of it has been for the CBD. But it seems to me that the long-term potential in terms of acreage for farmers really, we don't need millions of acres ultimately, even if this market grows considerably. But the big market for farmers and possibly potentially the overall size of the market could be in the fiber and the nutrition and the grain for industrial and body care, everything like that. So I'm really pleased to hear that you're moving into that sector in terms of the breeding side.
Yep. My life mission is to plant as many plants as I can. So, and I think we'll be able to use CBD oil to replace a lot of weird things like high fructose corn syrup and other preservative things that once you get to plant the plant as bountiful as we want to do, we could see it's endless possibilities, And cannabinoids, I do believe that cannabinoids will be one of the most important, because every human body and every, pet, everybody with an endocannabinoid system needs it. So I see that it's broken right now and it's a little bit disjointed, but I do think the cannabinoids are just going to be as important. And then all these other ones, we'll see how it works out with graphene and paper and biofuels and building products. And it's really going to be up to innovators and the government allowing us to do it. That's really what it's all about. Yeah.
So Janelle, I know that you have some body care products as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Are they primarily CBD-based products? Or are you also using hemp seed oil? Are you looking at some of these other markets in addition to sort of your primary market?
Yeah, so we're basically, we do have a body care line. Most of it is all CBD based. Our soaps, we do use hemp seed oil with our soaps. It's not a line of products that took off as well as I thought it was gonna. I think the cosmetic space is a little, it's it's like any other space in consumer packaged goods. There's a lot of players in it that have been in it for a very long time. The topical and cosmetic space, though, is a little bit more open than our consumables right now with the FDA. So, but it's a challenging space to get into when it's, you know, the whole entire market as a whole is not a large market per se, like the drink industry. So you're already playing in a very small market with a lot of different brands in the space that have been in there for a very long time that have good reputations. So it's a little challenging. Now, as far as we are predominantly a CBD company. There are some things that we're working towards now, doing some stuff in the supplement space with adding other types of herbs and vitamins and items like that to allow us to make structure function claims. Because like I stated previously, you know, the CBD industry has kind of done itself a little disservice, not spending more time, effort, and energy into research and development and allowing us to create some structure function claims on CBD alone. So now you kind of have to look at how do we make those structure function claims that are needed, especially in this new era of COVID, for immune boost and sleep aids and anxiety and items like that. And you know, right now we have to look at other avenues that are good herbs, good essential oils, really good vitamins to be able to add into CBD to help with those structure function claims. So that's kind of where we're moving to right now as a product company. But it is interesting. I'm looking forward to the day that the grain industry and the fiber industry catches up with the CBD industry in the United States. I think that that's really going to change the landscape for hemp all the way around. We're just not there yet. The infrastructure is a lot more expensive to do when you're looking at those two different types of entities versus the CBD side of things. It's relatively inexpensive for the infrastructure on the manufacturing side. So that's kind of it. We'll get there one day, just not yet. I'm excited to see what happens when it does come down, though.
Yeah, I think the growth in those sectors is a little more, not as stratospheric as the growth in the CBD products has been, but I do know that especially with the grain, for example, the FDA has now approved the shelled hemp seed, the seed oil, and the protein powder as generally recognized as safe or GRAS status, and I think that's going to really open up some markets. Certainly, in the nutrition side, we're going to see some of these big CPG companies that are going to come in and really want to get put more products in the space with hemp. So.
Well, an animal feed is going to be very exciting. I'm actually on the Equian task force for the Hemp Feed Coalition. I think it's a really good organization if you're looking to get behind animal feed and all the stuff that they're doing to try to get grain and grain production of hemp into the animal feed stream. I think that it's going to be super important for that industry to be able to make, you know, animal feed and use grain to do so.
Yep. Yeah, it was interesting. I was on Oregon State University is doing a conference today, actually, and yesterday they had a meeting, and one of the researchers there talked about research they're doing. Apparently, they've raised about $300,000 to research actually feeding biomass to animals and trying to figure out whether there's any safety issues and what the benefits might be. And so,
yeah, we donated. We have a very specific extraction method we use for Harmony. It's a lipid infusion, so no harmful solvents actually touch the product at any time. So we took a bunch of our leftover waste and we donated it to the Animal Feed Coalition, and they've been doing research with several universities with it, our leftover waste biomass. And so far it's been promising. I mean, it's a whole new avenue for us to be able to sell something that we're throwing away, which I think is super important for the industry, especially on the CBD side of things.
Yeah, and I liked what you said about the structure function claims too. Obviously, we hear all this anecdotal evidence of how CBD is helping people in so many different ways, but we really need a little more documentation, real research and evidence to kind of show specifically what it is so that the companies can make claims about it to consumers, like you said.
Yeah. And the one that did, GW Pharmaceuticals, wow.
They just got bought for $7.2
billion acquisition. Right. And that's just for epilepsy. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, it's amazing to think about what hemp's capabilities and cannabis's capabilities are really going to be able to accomplish, both as medicine, as a product, and as an economic boost. I mean, that blew my mind. You know, $7.2 billion acquisition.
Yeah.
You know,
pretty incredible plant we've got here.
It is. It is.
Janelle, I'm going to start with you, but I'd like to hear from both you and Adrian about any thoughts you have on predictions for the future, where you see the industry heading over the next few years here.
Well, you know, I think we're in a really positive space right now. Obviously, everybody is looking forward to the FDA and them coming out and promulgating regulations for a pathway for us to be able to sell our products to the consumer that makes it legal and safe and everybody feels comfortable with. And I think, you know, if we look into the future and we see that happening within the next 2 to 3 years, then you can kind of see right now in the industry, there's some consolidation that's happening. You're seeing some people starting to consolidate together to become bigger because they know that that pathway is coming. Once that pathway happens, I just believe that the whole industry is going to right itself rather quickly. We're going to see a lot of the demand that's needed for the supply that we can get open up. And so I think it's just exciting times right now. I think, you know, right now it's looking at where you want to be in 2 years from now when the FDA does create that pathway. I use 2 years, but it may be 3, it may be 1. But just having that foresight to know that it's coming and understanding as a company, you know, once that happens, the doorways that are going to open for you. And, you know, I think it's also an exciting time with the new administration and what we can look forward to. I mean, there's lots of talk about the Banking Act passing. I think once that Banking Act passes and people feel confident it may happen this year, that we're looking at being able to have access to capital that we've never had access to, especially smaller businesses that may not be as big as some of the larger players. They can go to their bank and get bank loans. So I think we're entering in this space that I'm, you know, with everything going on legally wise and legislatively wise over the next 4 years during this administration and regulatory wise, I think it's a really exciting time to be in CBD.
Right. Adrian, how about you? What are your thoughts on the future from your perspective at High Grade? And
you know, I'll agree with her. It feels like a positive time. I don't really look at in crystal balls. It always gets cloudy if I do. But I think that there's an inevitability to hemp's popularity and productivity and potentiality within our society. And I'm really looking forward to seeing, you know, the stigma being erased, even all the way up to THC, so that people can understand the cannabis plant and its uses. And I think that we're at that time. We're at that critical juncture where you're going to see people look at it not so much as just where, you know, the government says it should be, but also what culture should be. And I think, you know, from the CBD side, it's already proven itself without any guidance. You know, it's already pretty much everywhere. Everyone wants it, and we're seeing that. So that's really exciting. I think that dam's gonna break. I do. I really think that it's leaking through right now. And when that dam breaks, you're gonna see CBD as similar to any, you know, dietary supplement or collagen or whatever, you know, whatever people are putting in products, and they're gonna see it and they're gonna be like, oh, that's good. I want to put that in my body. And then from behind that, I think one of the most important things, and maybe this is a good thing, COVID kind of slowed us down, made us understand that we do have to do a lot more work. We do have to get a lot more education to what hemp can do. And it's also inspiring a lot of people to get excited about the industrial sector. And, you know, at High Grade, to be honest, we are just excited about the industrial sector now because the CBD market hit a glut, and it became something where you do have to be highly sophisticated. You do have to really figure out your niche and win your market share. But we've got this whole second wave now with industrial use. It's going to be really exciting. And, you know, Santa Fe Farms acquisition of High Grade and Center Pivot Group, we're now looking at, you know, putting as much research, time, development into building materials, into plastics, into, you know, graphene and oil replacement and all the different things that we can start to do with this paper. You know, I'm talking with someone from Koch brothers, you know, pulp and paper. I never thought I would talk to anyone about that, but now you're starting to see how this is going to shake out. These people are looking. We talked to a group that is associated with Philip Morris, and they're saying that Philip Morris is not even bad-mouthing the hemp cigarettes for the future. So I think we're going to see a lot of mainstream acceptance in the next 2 to 3 years, like she said, when we get FDA approval, obviously the first wave will happen, but then we're going to start seeing it grown for all these other purposes. And it could be one of the most important cultural things in our time. I mean, and I'm not trying to, look in the crystal ball and overblow our industry, but even John Mackey said it at the MJ Biz conference. Hemp is going to have its own economy, and he is the owner of Whole Foods. I think he knows pretty well where this is all going. So I'm looking for more of that. I hope the Elon Musks and the Greta Thunbergs and the Leonardo DiCaprios of the world jump in. I'm hoping that a lot of people that see how good hemp can be, not just for CBD and for cannabis use, but also for the earth and for the soil and for our air quality. That's what I'm hopeful for. That's what I see. And that could be incredibly inspiring. That's what I'm excited for.
Thank you, Janelle, and thank you, Adrian. We also want to pay a special thanks to Senator Wyden. Thank you to South by Southwest and High Grade Hemp Seed. Hope you all enjoyed this today. It's been a very enlightening conversation. And I'd just like to remind you all that if you would like to find out more about hemp or support our 1% THC petition, please go to votehemp.com.